ocean swallowed the last trace of daylight as the boat rocked violently under a sky that looked torn open by something ancient. Emily Carter gripped the rusted rail, her breath shaking as she stared across the black waves. Something moved out there, something tall, pale, and wrong. She blinked hard, but the shape didn't fade. It only leaned closer, as if stretching from the horizon itself. And then, as lightning cracked across the water, Emily saw the impossible. A human face floating high above the ocean surface, its mouth wide open, screaming without sound. She froze. The wind died. The boat engine coughed once, then went silent. And the scream in the sky suddenly snapped its head toward her, as if noticing her for the first time. Emily whispered, "No. No, that can't be real." The face leaned and the ocean swelled beneath it, forming a giant shadow rising from the deep. And just before everything went black around her, she heard her brother Noah shout her name behind her, his voice swallowed by the storm. If you're listening to this and you enjoy dark, real ghost encounters, stay with the story, subscribe, and don't miss what happens next. Because this might be one of the most disturbing things ever found in the remote seas surrounding Australia stories. They tried to hide under labels like Top 15 Haunted Islands in Australia. Real haunted evidence found across remote seas. Emily gasped awake on the deck, drenched, her vision spinning. The boat's deck lights flickered like dying candles. Noah knelt beside her, soaked to the bone, shaking her shoulders. "Emily, hey. Emily, look at me. What happened?" She pushed herself up, swallowing hard, staring into the darkness around them. The sea looked calm now, impossibly calm. "There was something out there," she whispered. "In the sky, or above the water." "I'm not sure." Noah frowned, his face pale. "You collapsed when the engine cut out. I thought you hit your head." "I didn't fall," she muttered. "Something pulled at me, like the ocean was breathing." The boat groaned beneath them. A cold mist drifted across the deck, swirling around their feet. The air smelled like old salt and something metallic like blood. Noah grabbed a flashlight and pointed it toward the sea. The beam didn't travel far, as if the darkness swallowed it whole. "We're close to the island," he said. "We should anchor soon." Emily stared at the GPS monitor beside the wheel. The island didn't even have a real name on charts. Locals only called it Blackwater Isle, whispered about in online forums and hidden travel threads. Every story about it circled the same warning. People who visit don't vanish because they get lost. They vanish because the island remembers them. The boat drifted closer until a jagged silhouette rose from the fog. Sharp cliffs, twisted trees, and something tall standing at the very edge like a person waiting for them. But the figure didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't look alive. "Noah," Emily choked, pointing. He followed her hand, then stiffened. "It's a tree," he said quickly, though his voice betrayed doubt. Lightning flashed again. The silhouette was still there, still human-shaped, but now Emily could clearly see its arms. Long, too long. The engine sputtered back to life on its own, a deep mechanical growl echoing across the water. Noah didn't touch anything. "Did you?" Emily began. "No," he said, stepping back. "I didn't start it." The boat surged forward without their input, turning its nose toward the island as if dragged by invisible hands. Emily rushed to the controls, slamming the throttle down, pulling back, pressing every button she could. Nothing responded. "It's like something took control," she whispered. The hull scraped against shallow rocks. The boat forced itself onto a narrow inlet, jerking them both forward. The spotlight flickered on, painting the shore in harsh white. Sand, dead trees, a narrow path, and scattered across the ground, half buried in wet earth, were footprints, fresh ones. Bare but too wide, too long. Emily's pulse hammered. "We're not alone here," Noah swallowed. "Let's get off this thing before the tide pulls us in." They grabbed their packs and stepped onto the sand. The moment Emily's boot touched the shore, she felt it, the ground humming beneath her, like a heartbeat coming from deep underground. A cold tremor crawled up her spine. "What if the stories are real?" she whispered, "about the island calling people." Noah gave a nervous laugh. "Ghost stories don't control boats." Emily didn't answer. Because something about the trees watching them, yes, watching made her doubt every rational thought she had. The forest swallowed the path ahead, branches arched like ribs of a giant carcass. The wind didn't blow, yet the leaves rustled softly, whispering their names. Not words, just the sound of their breathing repeated back at them. They followed the narrow trail, the beam of their flashlight jittering across crooked trunks and moss-covered stones. Emily kept glancing behind them, convinced she'd see the figure again, but the dark stayed empty until the second minute of their walk. A shape crossed the path ahead. Tall, slow, silent. "Noah, did you see that?" Emily whispered, stopping cold. "I saw something," he admitted. "Could be a kangaroo. Kangaroos don't walk on two legs like that." The flashlight flickered again. This time, Emily saw something in the corner of her vision, a pale hand curling around a tree trunk, pulling back slowly like something hiding from the light. She raised the beam instantly, but nothing was there. The path opened into a clearing where a stone archway stood half-collapsed. Ancient carvings covered it, circles, lines, spirals that looked almost like screaming faces. And right beneath the arch lay a wooden sign, weathered and cracked. "We tried to warn you, turn back." Noah knelt beside it, brushing the dirt away. "This looks recent." Emily shook her head. "Why would someone leave it here?" A sudden crack echoed through the trees. They spun around. The branches behind them bent inward, forming a dome-like shape over the path they had just walked, as if sealing them inside. The forest shifted, closing. "We're being surrounded," Emily whispered. Noah grabbed her hand. "Keep moving." They stepped through the archway. The air on the other side felt heavier, colder. Sound changed. Every footstep echoed longer than it should. Leaves crunched twice. Their breathing came back to them delayed, like something was mocking it from a distance. Something moved again behind them. Emily turned slowly. Her flashlight beam froze on a figure standing inside the trees. A tall man. Or at least shaped like one. His skin was gray-blue, stretched thin across bones. His eyes glowed faintly, like lantern wicks. And his jaw hung slightly open, as if broken long ago. He didn't move. He just stared. Noah whispered, "Emily, don't run." The figure took one step closer, silent, weightless, its foot leaving no imprint on the soil. Emily's heart hammered so loudly she thought the thing could hear it. The man moved another step, tilting its head, staring straight into her. Noah reached for her arm. "Emily, walk slowly." But Emily couldn't move. The creature lifted one hand, pointing at her chest. Its fingers were impossibly long and shaking, as if remembering something. Then its mouth opened wider, wider far past anything human. A sound leaked out. Not a scream. Not a growl, a whisper. "I know your name?" Emily stumbled back in shock and her flashlight fell from her hand, hitting the ground and rolling, its beam landing on something half buried in the dirt. A camera, covered in dried seaweed and rust. She picked it up without thinking, flipping open the cracked screen. A single video file. But when she clicked play, the screen didn't show an image, it showed a written message instead. "If you see the sky screaming, it's already too late." Emily's blood went cold. The creature stepped forward again, its glowing eyes widening. And then, a deafening snap echoed above them, as something huge moved in the treetops, showering branches and dust upon their heads. Emily looked up, and what she saw made her scream. The branches above them tore apart as a massive shape unfolded from the treetops, long limbs stretching, bending the wood as if it weighed nothing. A pale torso slid downward, almost gliding between the trees. Eyes, dozens of them, blinked open across its body, each one focusing on Emily with slow, deliberate hunger. Noah pulled her backward. "Go! Emily, run!" The creature dropped lower. Its limbs bent like broken marionettes, joints bending where no joints should exist. Its many eyes narrowed, all reflecting the flashlight beam like tiny, hungry moons. Emily stumbled, tripping over roots, her heart hammering against her ribs. The forest around them seemed to pulse, every tree shuddering, every branch trembling. The air tasted metallic again, thick enough to choke on. The creature screeched, not loud, but sharp, like metal scraping bone, and lunged toward them. Emily bolted. Noah grabbed her arm, dragging her down a narrow path that twisted deeper into the island's core. Branches slapped their faces. Roots clawed at their boots. Leaves whispered warnings as they tore past. Behind them, the creature crawled with horrifying speed, its limbs scraping stone, its body folding and unfolding like a nightmare that didn't obey physical laws. Emily gasped. "Where do we go? Where do we just move?" Noah shouted. They burst into another clearing, this one lit by a faint blue glow. Strange stones circled a shallow pit, glowing with patterns like constellations carved into rock. The pit itself pulsed with faint light, like the heartbeat she felt earlier in the soil. The ground trembled. Emily froze. Noah, it's waking up. What is? I don't know. But it's underneath us. The creature stopped at the tree line, staring at them, as if hesitant to enter the glowing circle. Its many eyes narrowed in unison. Emily looked at Noah. Afraid. Noah didn't waste a second. Then stay in the circle, but the ground cracked beneath the stones. A thin line of blue light shot between their feet like lightning. Emily's vision blurred. A voice then, distant echoed through her skull. Do not disturb what sleeps. She staggered, gripping her head. Noah grabbed her shoulders. Emily, stay with me. The voice faded, replaced by a deep rumbling under the earth. The creature hissed from the shadows, backing away. Emily looked into the pit. Something beneath the soil twitched. Something enormous. A shape that shouldn't exist, like bones the size of trees shifting beneath the ground. Noah, we need to get out of here, she whispered. Agreed. They backed away from the pit, moving toward a narrow opening between two massive rocks. The creature followed silently, its body lowering, eyes dimming, watching them with a predator's patience. As they reached the gap, something cold brushed Emily's ankle. She froze. A hand small, pale, childlike reached from beneath the leaves, grasping her pant leg. Emily screamed and kicked back, stumbling into Noah. More hands emerged. Thin arms. Small shoulders. The pale figures of children rising from the ground, their eyes blank white, their mouths slightly open. Water dripped from their hair, as if they had just crawled out of the ocean. Noah whispered in terror, Emily? Those are... She shook her head violently. Don't say it. The children moved toward them in slow, jerky motions, their feet dragging through leaves and mud. Their clothes torn school uniforms, faded shirts hung from their soaked bodies. One girl raised her trembling hand toward Emily's face, her lips quivering as if trying to speak. Emily whispered, Noah. Why are they looking at me like that? The girl's jaw dropped wider. A whisper escaped. Help us. Emily felt her throat tighten. They're trapped. They're trapped on this island. The girl pointed past Emily, her arms shaking violently toward the cliffside. Emily turned. A structure stood there, partially buried by roots and vines. A massive stone temple carved into the cliffs. Its entrance was a tall, narrow slit, glowing faintly from within. Noah exhaled. That wasn't on any map. Emily swallowed. We need to get inside. But the kids... The children suddenly gasped in unison, their eyes widening in fear, not at Emily, but at something behind her. They backed away, sinking into the soil like melting wax. The forest went silent. The creature had returned, but now it was not alone. Two more shapes slithered between the trees' tall, pale forms with limbs that bent backward, their eyes glowing with the same sickly light. All three forms crawled toward Emily and Noah, silent and relentless. Emily whispered, We're dead. Noah, we're dead. No, he rasped, grabbing her hand and pulling her toward the temple. Run, Emily now! They sprinted across the clearing as the creatures lunged. One slammed into a tree so hard its trunk splintered. Another crawled sideways across the rocks like a spider. The third stretched its neck unnaturally long, its face inches from Emily's shoulder as she ran. She dove toward the temple entrance. A cold hand grazed her back. She fell inside, skidding across ancient stone. Noah slid in after her and slammed his shoulder against the stone door. It moved slowly, painfully until it shut with a thunderous echo. Darkness swallowed them whole. Emily's lungs burned. Noah collapsed beside her, panting. For several seconds, neither spoke. Only their ragged breaths echoed in the silent chamber. Finally, Noah whispered, Are you hurt? Emily shook her head. No. But that thing, those kids, Noah, what is this place? The darkness around them suddenly flickered alive with faint blue light. Glyphs carved into the walls ignited one by one like stars lighting a night sky. Emily stepped closer. The carvings showed figures, human figures arriving on an island. They walked into forests, entered caves, and then the drawings changed. Faces distorted, eyes hollowed out, bodies stretched, mouths split open. Emily whispered, This place, it changes people. It corrupts them, Noah murmured. The next panel showed the ocean itself rising, swallowing the island in a storm of screaming faces. Above the waves, a monstrous shape loomed, its outline eerily similar to the face Emily saw in the sky. Her voice trembled. "Noah, the sky screaming thing. This is all connected." Another rumble shook the chamber. Dust fell from the ceiling. Something outside slammed against the stone door, hard. The creatures were trying to break in. Emily grabbed Noah. "We need to move. Now." They slipped deeper into the temple, following a narrow tunnel that descended into darkness. The walls grew colder the deeper they went, coated in something slick and freezing. Noah whispered, "Did you hear that?" Emily listened. A soft singing echoed from below. A child's voice, sweet, gentle, but completely wrong. They rounded a corner and froze. A small girl stood in the center of the chamber, her back toward them. Wet hair clung to her shoulders. She wore a faded yellow raincoat, dripping water onto the stone. "No," Emily whispered. She wasn't with the others. The girl hummed softly, her voice echoing unnaturally through the chamber. Noah reached out. "Emily, don't approach her." But Emily's legs moved on their own. Something in the girl's voice tugged at her mind, pulling her closer. The girl turned her head just slightly, enough for Emily to see the impossible. Her face was not a face. It was a swirling mass of water-shifting, boiling, screaming faces trapped inside it. Children, adults, dozens of them. Emily stumbled back. The girl giggled with a mouth she didn't have. Noah grabbed Emily's arm. "Run." But the girl extended her hand, and the water inside her surged outward, pulling the air with it. A miniature tide swept across the chamber, grabbing Emily by the ankles and yanking her forward. Emily clawed at the stone floor, screaming Noah's name. Noah lunged, grabbing her wrists and pulling with all his strength. The watery arms dragged her harder, screaming faces swirling closer, reaching. "Emily! Don't let go!" Her fingers slipped. The water surged upward. It swallowed her whole. She was pulled into darkness as the childlike figure leaned over her, and dozens of trapped faces screamed inside the vortex. And as Emily was dragged under, a voice deep and ancient whispered inside her skull. "You were chosen." The chamber cracked overhead. And Noah screamed her name as the floor split open beneath him, and a massive shadow rose from the depths. The stone floor groaned as something enormous pushed upward through the cracks, forcing the chamber to buckle. Noah staggered back, barely keeping his footing as a towering figure emerged from the darkness taller than any human. Its body made of dripping black sludge that clung to the walls like oil. The creature's head scraped the ceiling, cracking the ancient carvings as it straightened its crooked spine. Its eyes, two hollow pits, glowed with the same faint blue light that pulsed through the temple walls. Its body wasn't solid. It flowed and shifted, its limbs elongating, then snapping back into shape, as if the thing couldn't decide what form it wanted to take. Noah's breath caught in his chest, because inside the creature's dark mass, he saw faces, hundreds of them, pressing outward against the surface, screaming, begging, eyes bulging, mouths open wide, trapped in eternal torment. "No," Noah whispered. "What are you?" The creature didn't speak, but a low vibration rolled through the chamber, shaking dust from the ceiling like falling ash. The walls trembled, the light dimmed. Noah backed away slowly. His body screamed to run, but his legs refused. The floor beneath him shifted with every movement, as if the entire temple was breathing. "Emily," he whispered, turning to the pit where she had vanished moments earlier. The water had sealed itself. The girl in the yellow raincoat was gone. Only darkness remained. He had to get her back. The creature stepped forward. Its massive foot hit the stone floor and left a sizzling print as if its touch burned everything beneath it. Noah stumbled toward the tunnel, gasping as the creature's limb extended, stretching far too long, and swiped across the chamber. Stone exploded behind him. Noah dove, rolling toward the narrow exit just as a wave of shadow whipped past, slicing through the air where his head had been. He crawled into the tunnel, heart pounding so loudly it drowned out the creature's deep rumble. But the tunnel wasn't safe. Water dripped from the ceiling in steady rhythm, pooling around his hands. The walls trembled with each distant step of the creature approaching from behind. Noah pushed forward. "Emily," he whispered again. "Please be alive." His voice echoed back strangely, warped by the temple's unnatural acoustics. He reached a fork in the path. One tunnel sloped downward, deeper into the earth where the singing had originated. The other spiraled upward toward faint, cold air. He hesitated, then he heard Emily's voice. Faint, muffled, but calling his name. Noah, help me. His chest tightened. Emily, I'm coming. He sprinted down the left tunnel, ignoring logic, ignoring fear. The air grew colder, almost painfully so. Frost coated the walls. His breath turned to vapor instantly. The tunnel widened into a large cavern, lit only by bioluminescent moss glowing a ghostly blue. The floor was covered in shallow water ankle-deep and icy cold. And floating in the center of the cavern was Emily, her body suspended mid-air, wrapped in tendrils of shimmering water swirling like a cocoon. Her eyes fluttered under closed lids, and her lips moved in silent whispers. Noah rushed toward her. Emily, Emily, wake up! But as he reached her, the water cocoon pulsed, sending a cold shockwave across the chamber. Noah staggered backward, falling into the shallow pool. The water beneath him rippled. Then hands rose from the pool, hundreds of them, small, pale, childlike hands grabbing at his legs, his arms, his clothing. Their faces surfaced next, mouths wide, eyes hollow, hair floating like seaweed, water children, the same ones from the forest. No, no, get off! Noah yelled, kicking violently. But the hands were stronger than any child should be, pulling him deeper into the pool, as if the water was bottomless. One child rose in front of him, her face inches from his. She opened her mouth, and the flood of seawater poured out, spilling across Noah's chest like she was drowning all over again. She whispered, voice gurgling, "Help! Her!" Noah strained against the water's pull. "I'm trying." The girl turned her head toward Emily's floating body. Before it takes her, the water surged upward. A massive shadow formed beneath Emily, shifting, twisting, something ancient pulling at the cocoon around her. Her body twitched violently as if something inside her was fighting back. Noah roared and forced himself upward through the grasping hands. He broke the water's surface, gasping, and lunged toward Emily's suspended form. The cocoon resisted at first. The water around her grew darker, swirling like a vortex. "No!" Noah yelled, grabbing her arm. "You're not taking her!" Her fingers twitched. Her eyelids fluttered. Then she gasped sharply, her eyes snapping open, filled with swirling blue light. "Noah," she whispered, voice echoing unnaturally. "It's inside me." The cavern shook. Water rose in spiraling columns around them, forming towering shapes, figures with elongated arms and faces twisted in agony. Emily tried to speak again, but her voice was layered hers and something ancient beneath it. "It chose me. Noah, it wants to leave this island. Through me." Noah's blood ran cold. The water children shrank away in terror, sinking beneath the surface. Their pale faces disappeared like candles being extinguished underwater. A deep bellow echoed through the cavern. The massive shadow from earlier now fully formed rose behind Emily, its arms stretching like tidal waves. Its body pressed upward, growing taller and wider until it filled the cavern, its head nearly scraping the stalactites. Noah stared in horror as the monster's face emerged from the water, a grotesque, distorted version of the giant face he had seen in the sky the night they arrived. The screaming sky Emily saw. The creature opened its mouth. A sound erupted, not audible, but physical. The cavern trembled, the water burst upward, the air itself seemed to vibrate painfully. Emily screamed, covering her ears. Noah fell to his knees as the vibration shook his bones. The monster leaned over Emily, its hollow eyes glowing brighter. Emily gasped, "It's trying to take me." Noah forced himself up and lunged toward her, grabbing her shoulders. "Fight it, Emily!" Her body spasmed violently. "I can't, it's too strong." Water surged around them again. The monster reached its massive hand toward Emily, the surface of its limb rippling with the imprisoned faces inside. Noah grabbed her tighter. "Emily, stay with me! Remember the boat, the storm. Remember!" Her eyes flickered. The blue glow inside them pulsed. Her voice cracked. I remember." "Noah!" The monster roared with a sound like collapsing waves. Water shot upward, slamming Noah backward into the cavern wall. His vision blurred, the world spun. He tried to stand, failed. He crawled through freezing water, clutching at rocks, forcing himself not to black out. Emily floated higher, the monster pulling her upward with invisible force. "Noah," she whispered, tears streaming from glowing eyes. "If it takes me, it leaves the island. It will spread." Noah's heart stopped. Emily sobbed. You can't let that happen." The monster rose taller, its colossal form stretching into the ceiling. Its arms wrapped around Emily like a cocoon of living tide. Emily gave Noah one last look. "Don't let it take me." The creature pulled her toward the ceiling. Noah screamed her name, dragging himself across the cavern floor. He threw himself upward, reaching. His fingertips brushed her ankle. For a brief moment, Emily looked down at him, her hand stretching toward his. Then the monster yanked her upward, and both of them vanished into the darkness above. The cavern shook violently. Water exploded from the ceiling like a burst dam. Noah was thrown backward into the water, tumbling helplessly. The last thing he saw before the chamber collapsed was a blinding blue light flooding down through the cracks. A voice whispered through the rising water, "She is ours now. She is ours now." The voice slithered through the water like a living thing, curling around Noah's ears as the cavern collapsed above him. A violent torrent surged downward, dragging him under, smashing him against stone. He clawed upward, but the current was too strong, pulling him deeper, spinning him in pitch-black water that felt colder than death. His lungs burned. His vision dimmed. His hands scraped uselessly against jagged rock. Then suddenly the current spat him out. Noah burst through the surface, gasping wildly as he slammed into a shallow pool. He coughed, choking up seawater, gripping the slick stone floor until the world stopped spinning. He lay there shivering, staring up at the cavern ceiling, a web of cracked stone and glowing blue veins. The entire structure groaned like a wounded beast. Emily was gone. The monster had taken her, and the island trembled with something ancient waking in its depths. Noah forced himself upright, dripping and trembling. His voice cracked. "Emily, please hold on." But he knew she couldn't hear him. A rumble echoed through the cavern, shaking loose dust and stone. Noah pushed to his feet, wincing at the sharp pain shooting through his side. There had to be a way up, a way to reach her, a way to stop whatever that thing planned to do with her. He limped toward a narrow passage on the far wall. The tunnel glowed faintly with pulsing blue light, the same unnatural hue that had filled Emily's eyes. The same light that marked the presence of the monster. He followed it. The tunnel sloped upward in a jagged spiral. The further he climbed, the more the walls pulsed, thump like a heartbeat. The stone felt warm beneath his palms, alive. He could even hear whispers inside the wall, like distant voices trapped behind stone. Children's voices, adults, screams, cries, a warning, a plea. He forced himself to ignore them, but they grew louder until words finally formed. "Turn back!" Noah clenched his jaw. "I'm not leaving her." The walls pulsed faster. "It will take you to..." He pushed forward. The tunnel narrowed until he had to crawl on hands and knees. Water dripped steadily on his back. His head brushed the ceiling. The space grew so tight he could barely breathe. The whispers pressed closer. "You cannot stop it. She is chosen. She will open the way." Noah squeezed through a tight gap and suddenly burst into open air. He stumbled into a higher chamber, massive and cathedral-like. Pillars of stone twisted upward like giant ribs. The air smelled of salt and old earth. A roar echoed far above him, wine, water, and something else. Something alive. A massive crack split the roof of the chamber, revealing the stormy night sky. Lightning flashed across the opening, illuminating the towering shape climbing through the fissure, dark, immense, rippling like the ocean's surface. The monster, dragging itself upward, dragging Emily with it. Emily floated in its grip like a lifeless doll, her hair whipping in the wind. Her body glowed faintly, pulsing with the same sick blue light threading through the creature's body. "No," Noah whispered, stomach dropping. The monster lifted her toward the crack, toward the open sky, toward freedom. Because it needed her to leave the island. And if it reached the ocean, if it reached the mainland, this thing wouldn't just haunt a remote island in Australia. It would haunt the entire world. Noah ran. He sprinted across the chamber, slipping on wet stone, nearly falling into deep pits cut into the floor. Wind tore across the chamber, howling like a living storm. Water poured from above in sheets. The monster was halfway out. Emily's eyes flickered weakly. Her lips trembled. "Noah," she whispered, barely audible. He screamed up at her, voice cracking with desperation. "Emily! Fight it! Don't let it control you!" Her body twitched. The creature growled a deep, oceanic groan that shook the stone pillars. It knew Noah was near. Its massive hand extended downward, stretching impossibly far, its black, rippling fingers crashing into the chamber like a tidal wave. Noah dove behind a fallen pillar as claws of living water slashed the ground where he'd been standing. Stone exploded. He fought to his feet again. "Emily, I'm coming." She lifted her head slightly as if fighting the monster's hold. "Noah, run. It's using me." Her voice cut off as the monster forced its grip tighter. Noah sprinted up a slanted slab of broken stone toward the fissure. Every step shook as the monster pushed through the opening above. Rain poured down, blinding him. Wind whipped against him so hard he nearly slipped backward. He climbed anyway. He had no choice. A massive roar rattled the entire island. The chamber walls cracked. Chunks of stone fell around him like meteors. He ducked, leaping over gaps, his hands bleeding as he clawed at slippery rock. He reached a narrow ledge near the fissure just as the monster pulled Emily fully above ground. She dangled in the creature's grip, suspended over the raging sea. Below them, waves crashed against jagged cliffs. The sky churned with unnatural clouds swirling around a massive face forming in the storm. The screaming sky Emily had seen. It wasn't a hallucination, it was real. And it was opening. Lightning flashed. Thunder boomed. Emily screamed suddenly, her real voice raw with pain. "Noah, help me!" Noah lunged upward, then froze. Because standing between him and the fissure was the girl in the yellow raincoat, her body dripping seawater. Her empty, swirling water face staring directly at him. The trapped souls inside her face shifted, screaming silently. Noah backed away, but she stepped forward, voice bubbling with drowning whispers. "You cannot take her. She belongs..." To the deep, Noah shook his head violently. "I'm not letting her die." The girl tilted her head. Water streamed from her mouth as she whispered, "You already did." Noah charged. The girl's thin arms extended, stretching into long, rippling limbs of water that lashed like whips. One slammed into Noah's chest, hurling him backward. He hit the stone wall hard, pain exploding through his ribs. He forced himself up. She struck again. Noah ducked, rolling across the wet stone, grabbing a loose chunk of rock. He hurled it at her. It passed through her body like it was thrown into a waterfall. She giggled, a sound that wasn't human. Noah darted around her, sprinting toward the fissure. She screamed, unleashing a blast of freezing water that hit him like a collapsing wave. He slid across the ground, gasping as cold ripped into his bones. The girl approached him, water swirling around her feet. She raised her hand, water forming a sharpened spear. She aimed for his heart. Noah's eyes widened, then a thunderous crack split the chamber. The monster roared in pain. Emily's voice echoed down from above, filled with agony, defiance, and something else. "No." The entire chamber pulsed with blinding blue light. The girl froze. Her watery body rippled violently, faces inside her swirling faster, screaming. Emily's voice boomed like a wave hitting cliffs. "Let him go!" The girl shrieked, clutching her head as her body shattered into a splash of water that dissolved instantly into mist. Noah blinked, shaking, stunned, alive. Above, Emily convulsed in the monster's grasp, the blue light blazing through her like lightning trapped inside her veins. She wasn't just fighting it. She was overpowering it. But the monster wasn't letting go. It pulled her higher, its immense torso squeezing through the fissure, stretching into the storm. Noah scrambled to his feet and leaped onto the final slab of stone leading to the opening. "Emily, hold on!" The monster roared again, shaking the island. Emily screamed. The wind howled. Lightning split the sky. Noah reached up, fingers inches from her ankle, and the monster's enormous hand snapped down toward him like a crashing wave. The impact shattered the ledge beneath him. Noah fell, tumbling backward, plunging into the darkness below, as Emily was dragged into the storm above. The last thing he heard was Emily sobbing his name. Then everything went black. The air ripped with a deep cracking sound as the lighthouse door blew inward, slamming against the inner wall so hard the glass in its frame exploded. Emma covered her face while Marcus pulled her down. But the cold wind that rushed inside felt nothing like wind, more like 100 unseen hands, dragging icy fingers along their skin. The lanterns they had lit flickered violently, then died all at once, drowning the tower in pure black. Emma tried to speak, but her breath caught when she heard footsteps circling them on the upper metal walkway, slow and deliberate, scraping the rusted floor with each step. Marcus shined his phone toward the spiral stairs, and that was when a shadow leaned over the railing, stretching longer than any human body could, its edges rippling as if made from liquid smoke. Emma whispered that they needed to move, but Marcus grabbed her arm and nodded sharply toward the door. They ran through it, bursting into the violent ocean air as waves smashed against the rocks below. Thunder cracked in the distance. Emma looked up, seeing a figure standing on the very top of the lighthouse, tall, unmoving, watching. She didn't know how it got there so fast, but its silhouette matched the twisted shape she saw in the archive photo of the lost lighthouse keeper from 1912, the one who supposedly walked straight into the water and never came back. The shadow lifted an arm and pointed toward the ocean. The ground vibrated beneath Emma's feet as she felt the rock shift like something massive was moving under them. Marcus shouted for her to run, but her legs locked as she watched a pale hand rise from the black water below, fingers stretching upward, long, and jointed wrong, grabbing at the rocks as if trying to pull a body up from the ocean floor. Another hand followed. Then a face, bloated, gray, eyes like empty pits. The drowned keeper dragged himself upward, seaweed clinging to his jaw like a beard, mouth hanging open as if still choking on the last breath he ever took. Emma screamed and finally forced her legs to obey, sprinting with Marcus across the narrow cliff path. Rain began to fall hard and fast as they struggled to keep their balance, the path slick beneath their shoes. Lightning lit the sky behind them, revealing dozens of figures in the storm-pale forms walking the shoreline, drifting between rocks, sliding from the water like they were being called to the surface. Marcus yelled that they had to reach the bunkhouse, the only building on the island with a reinforced door. They reached it, shoved their way inside, and slammed the metal latch down. The pounding on the walls began almost immediately, soft at first, like knuckles tapping wood, then harder and harder until dust rained from the rafters. Emma pulled out the journal she stole from the archive room back in the mainland museum, flipping through pages until she found the section about the lighthouse keeper's final entry. She read aloud that he heard voices from the sea telling him that the island was cursed, that the land itself wasn't real land but the top of something ancient sleeping beneath the waves. Marcus stared at her, horrified, when she pointed to a line at the bottom of the page, written in a different ink, as if added later. "This island is a mouth," it said, "and it remembers what it has eaten." The floor shifted under them again, dust falling in thick streams from the ceiling. The pounding outside grew more frantic, but the drowned figures didn't seem to be trying to break in. Their hands slid across the walls like they were searching for something. Emma's voice trembled as she realized they weren't trying to enter. They were trying to feel where the island was weakest. Thunder shook the building. Marcus tried to call for help, but the moment he opened his phone, every signal bar vanished, replaced with a single notification he'd never seen before. Return. Then the screen shut off. Emma backed away from the window as a face appeared in it, pressed against the glass from outside, its mouth filled with long strands of seaweed that moved like living worms. The eyes stared right at her. The face whispered something she couldn't hear through the storm, but she could read its lips. "Come home." The glass cracked. Marcus grabbed her hand, dragging her toward the far wall where a trapdoor led to a storage cellar. They pulled it open and climbed down, closing it above them. The cellar was cramped, filled with old tools and equipment from when researchers visited the island decades ago. A single emergency lantern sat on a shelf, and Marcus lit it, bathing the room in a weak orange glow. The pounding upstairs stopped suddenly. The silence was worse. Emma pressed her ear to the floorboards. She could hear something dragging across the floor above them slow, like a wet rope being pulled. Marcus whispered for her to step back as the boards above began to bow inward, bending under a weight that moved directly toward the trapdoor. Emma held her breath. A long crack tore through the ceiling, and through it, seawater began dripping onto Marcus's shoulder. He jerked back, but the dripping intensified, pouring in thin streams as if the ocean was trying to flood the cellar. Emma frantically searched through old wooden crates until she found a rolled map of the island. She unrolled it, and her eyes widened. The bunkhouse, lighthouse, and cliffs were arranged in a pattern she recognized a spiral, leading toward the center of the island. Marked in the exact center was a note written in small, shaky letters. The pit. Marcus leaned closer. Emma read the faded ink describing an old cave system used by whalers in the 1800s, long sealed off after a collapse. But another note beside it said, "The cave reopens when the island wakes." The boards above them groaned again, and then the trapdoor began to lift slowly inch by inch, though no hands were visible pulling it. Emma grabbed the lantern and ran for the narrow back tunnel that led out of the cellar, nearly tripping over a rusted anchor on the floor. Marcus shoved her ahead as the trapdoor flew open with a crash behind them. They moved through the tunnel, water rising around their ankles as the ground sloped downward. The lantern flickered. Emma saw movement ahead, faint shapes on the walls, shadows shifting like something was crawling through the rock beside them. The tunnel opened into a cavern with jagged stone and a narrow path leading toward the sound of distant waves. They followed the echo, emerging onto a hidden shoreline inside the cave. In the center of the cavern was a pit, a vast hole where the water churned violently, as if boiling. Deep groans echoed from it, like a creature breathing in its sleep. Emma clutched Marcus's arm as she read the carved letters on the stone wall. "When you hear the drowned rise, the island remembers its hunger." Marcus whispered they had to find another way out, but Emma was staring at the pit. The water inside rose suddenly, forming a massive spiraling column that lifted shapes within it, bodies twisting upward, faces distorted, their mouths open in silent screams. The column leaned toward them, and the cavern shook violently. Stones fell from the ceiling, smashing around them. Emma and Marcus backed away as the water spilled over the pit's edge, sweeping across the rocky floor like a living tide. The bodies moved within it, pushing toward them, hands reaching through the water as if trying to pull them under. Emma slipped on the wet rock, falling to her knees as a hand burst from the rising water and grabbed her wrist with freezing strength. Marcus lunged, pulling her back just as more hands shot upward, clawing at the air. The water level kept rising. The drowned figures climbed onto the rocks, their bodies dripping, their eyes locked on Emma. The leader, the lighthouse keeper, stood at the front. He opened his mouth, and seawater poured out as he pointed toward the pit. The cavern walls shook, splitting down the middle. A massive shape moved below the water, something enormous waking beneath them. The ground cracked under Emma's feet. The drowned began chanting in gurgling voices, the sound echoing in the cavern until the rocks trembled. Marcus shouted that the ceiling was collapsing, but Emma couldn't breathe. A giant eye opened beneath the water's surface, black, endless, ancient. The island groaned, the ground heaving upward as if something was rising. And when the creature's vast jaws began to open beneath them, Emma grabbed Marcus's hand as the cavern floor split wide, and an enormous shadow exploded from the pit below. The force of its rise blasted Emma and Marcus off their feet, hurling them against the jagged cavern wall. The lantern shattered, plunging everything into a choking, living darkness where the only light came from the creature's massive eye glowing beneath the storming water. The drowned figures dropped to their knees as the cavern shook apart, chanting louder, their voices bubbling like they were breathing the ocean instead of air. Emma crawled toward Marcus, her palms slipping on the wet stone as the ancient thing uncoiled beneath them, long, scaled, impossibly vast, like the entire island was just the top of its skull. The ground heaved again, snapping rock like bone. The creature pushed upward, cracks racing across the cavern ceiling toward the surface. Marcus grabbed Emma's arm, shouting that they had to move now before the island swallowed itself. But the drowned keeper rose in front of them, water dripping from his hollow eyes, blocking their path. His jaw split wider than human, seawater gushing out as he pointed at them again, then at the creature below, then at the collapsing exit tunnel. Emma screamed as the keeper lunged, his fingers stretching like strands of kelp. Marcus shoved her aside and swung a broken piece of driftwood, smashing it against the keeper's skull. It didn't stop him. His face reformed like his bones were liquid. He grabbed Marcus's throat, lifting him off the ground as the cavern buckled around them. Emma rushed forward, ramming the broken wood into the keeper's chest. The drowned figures shrieked in one voice as the keeper dropped Marcus and staggered back, black water spraying from the wound. The creature surged again beneath them. A massive, barnacle-covered spine broke through the pit, rising like a jagged mountain. Emma's gut twisted with the realization that the island wasn't sitting on the creature. The island was part of it. Marcus coughed, pulling Emma toward the collapsing tunnel. Rocks fell like meteorites, the roar of the beast shaking the air itself. The drowned rushed after them, crawling through the rising seawater, their movements jerky and wrong. Emma crawled under a falling boulder as the tunnel ceiling dropped, sparks of light blasting through cracks as sunlight pierced the stone. They reached a narrow shaft leading upward. A wooden ladder rotted with age clung to the wall. Emma climbed first, every rung threatening to snap. Marcus followed, the cavern tearing apart below them. The drowned keeper leaped, grabbing Marcus's boot. Marcus screamed, nearly falling, but Emma leaned down, swinging a metal tool she found jammed in the wall. She struck the keeper's hand once, twice, 3 times until the fingers broke away like brittle coral. The keeper dropped back into the rising water. The creature roared, a sound like 1,000 storms shattering the ocean. They climbed faster, bursting through a weak patch of earth into the open sky as the center of the island caved inward. Trees snapped, rocks tumbled. The lighthouse tilted hard left as the entire landmass split like an egg. Emma and Marcus ran across the dirt as the ground fell away behind them, the island sinking into the sea. The boat was still tied at the small dock, slamming violently against the posts as waves grew monstrous. They sprinted toward it, slipping on mud, the air filled with the deafening roar of the beast rising beneath the island. The lighthouse finally fell, crashing into the water in a spray of stone. Marcus jumped into the boat first, starting the engine with shaking hands. Emma pushed off the dock just as the earth under it collapsed into the creature's gaping jaws. The boat surged forward, bouncing violently as Marcus floored the throttle. Behind them, the island sank deeper, swallowed piece by piece. The drowned figures stood at the shoreline, what remained of it, watching silently as the water rose over their faces. Emma held onto the side of the boat as a massive shape lifted from the ocean behind them. The creature's full head breached the surface, black eyes, long ridges of bone, teeth like rusted pillars. It towered over them, casting a shadow that swallowed the horizon. The ocean swelled, pulling the boat backward. Marcus screamed at the engine to hold. Emma stared into the creature's ancient eye as it fixed on her, recognizing her, as if she had trespassed on its memory. It inhaled. The sea rushed backward. The boat nearly flipped. And then, the creature plunged downward, dragging the entire collapsed island with it into a roaring maelstrom that swallowed rock, sand, and every drowned soul in one colossal pull. The whirlpool closed violently, sending a shockwave across the surface. Silence. Emma and Marcus drifted on the churning water, gasping, soaked, shaking, but alive. Emma stared at the empty ocean where the island had been. Nothing remained, not even a rock, just a calm, endless sea. Marcus whispered, "We can't tell anyone." Emma looked down at her phone. The screen lit on its own. Return. The device shut off again. A cold wave slapped the side of the boat. Emma swallowed, whispering to the camera she had left recording on the dashboard, her voice trembling but steady. And if you made it to the end of this nightmare, don't just leave. Hit subscribe, join us, and stay close. Because whatever was under that island, it isn't gone. It's only waiting. Thunder rumbled across the horizon. Something massive moved beneath the boat. The water bulged, and the final ripple touched the hull,